Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. The Supreme Court on Tuesday permitted the centre to provide reservation and promotion for SC/ST employees as per the law until the issue is adjudicated by its constitution bench. At the same time, the apex court didn't clarify which law to follow. The centre told the bench that it was bound to give promotion to its employees and that promotion has virtually come to a standstill after orders passed by various high courts. In April, Union Minister and BJP ally Ram Vilas Paswan, who has emerged as the government's key spokesperson on Dalit issues, told reporters that the government will move the apex court for the repeal of its directions, which he added have halted the reservation for these communities in promotion. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if there should be SC/ST quota in reservation. Joining me on the program today are B.K. Chaturvedi, former Cabinet Secretary, Professor S.S. Jodhka, Department of Sociology, JNU, Piyush Singh, Advocate of the Supreme Court, and Ashok Kumar Bharti, Principal Advisor, National Confederation of Dalit Organizations. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Chaturvedi, I'd like to begin with you, of course. First, let's try and put into perspective the Supreme Court's decision as far as SC/ST quota in reservation is concerned. What do you make of the Supreme Court's observation?
Well, the Supreme Court has had a number of petitions before it, and it had heard it earlier. And the question was that sometime in 2006, in the case of Nagraj, the court had finally held that the articles of the Constitution 16(4)(a), which mentioned that it is possible to have reservations in promotions, they were also subject to the fact that they were not automatic. They were subject to three limitations, and they mentioned the question of the efficiency in services as one, backwardness as another criteria, and adequate representation of the services as the third criteria. So this was challenged by many who felt aggrieved by this. And the Supreme Court was hearing those petitions, and they have today held that the government may act as per law. And the Supreme Court also said that they are not clarifying what the law is. And this will, of course, all these will be subject to the constitutional bench judgment before whom this matter is going, because 2006 was such a judgment. So they are saying that whether they should review such a judgment, that matter has gone before another constitution bench. Now the question is that whether what will be the interpretation which the government will take of these observations. That will be very crucial. I am sure the government will consult its law officers, its Ministry of Law, and then take a call as to what we mean by saying, what the meaning of the interpretation of the word is, that the government can go ahead with the appointments as per law, because specifically when the court said also, according to the reports which was there, that they are not clarifying what the law is.
Right.
So I hope that this question will get settled in the course of time, and they will be able to make a call. Only one point I wish to highlight here. Right. That an important question has arisen here. The Article 335 of the Constitution is talking about the efficiency in services, the reservations, etc., being subject to all those efficiency in services. Now that is a question on which the courts had in 2006 mentioned. There has been no assessment as to how this will impact. The court had said that they should make an assessment of such an efficiency, but none of the state governments or the central government has taken a call on that. They have taken more of a political judgment, feeling that it is necessary to provide for reservation.
Sure. Points taken. Points taken, Mr. Chaturvedi. Let me bring in the other panelists as well right now. I'm sorry to cut you short there. Let me bring in Ashok Kumar Bharti now. Do we need SC/ST quota in promotions, what then happens to efficiency and what then happens to meritorious candidates?
Well, let me tell you that this question or this bogey of reservation is always raised in the question of when the issues of rights, equal rights, rights of representation of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe rise. I would like to ask, in last 70 years, this country is in such a deplorable state. Who is responsible? Who was the cabinet secretary? Who was the secretaries to the different department of the governments of India and various state governments? These people have destroyed this country. And now these people are raising the question of the merit. You want to ask my merit? Who built Taj Mahal? Who built Qutub Minar? Who built parliaments? Who built the constitution of this country? And you are asking me the efficiency? If you want to show the efficiency, who clean your drains? Can you drain even a day? So I guess this is a simply casteist government, casteist bureaucracy and casteist judiciary raise such funny questions because they do not come, they do not know what the pain, suffering that we have gone through under the hands of the bureaucracy. I ask that the reservation has been for long. Who failed to implement the quota in the ministry itself, in the government itself? Even now, class 1, only 13% scheduled castes are there, only 7% are the scheduled tribe there. Can these 20% destroy the efficiency of the whole government? This is the government run by the upper caste, upper class elites, and they want to make sure that the poor upper class fight with the Dalits and Adivasi who are itself facing the hardship at the hand of these upper caste and upper class.
Okay, so it's the doing of the politicians and political parties is what you're suggesting right now. Let me bring in Piyush Singh to find out a legal aspect. What does the law state when it comes to reservation and promotion? Piyush.
Right. Frank, one thing is that reservation does not mean right to redressal, as said by Mr. Ashok Bharti. It is right to access. That was the basic intent of reservation, to give access to people. So Article 14, Article 15, subclause 4, Article 16, subclause 4 made reservation for the people. Now what we are talking today about reservation and promotion, the actual issue raised in Indira, I would say Indira Sahni case in 1992, when they were discussing about the Mandal Commission case and also the reservation with respect to OBC. In the Indira Sahni case, the Supreme Court held that, of course, because of some notification on office orders, there is also reservation in promotions to SC/ST candidates, which can be further extended for a period of 5 years, and then the government has to enact a proper law because there is no law for reservation promotion. That was in 1992 Indira Sahni judgment. In 1995, within a period of 5 years, the central government brings up a 77th amendment and introduces 16 subclause 4A to it, which says reservation in promotion to SC/ST candidates. Now, with the interpretation to reservation in promotion, Supreme Court lays down that in case a SC/ST candidate gets a reservation and gets a promotion because of that reservation, the general category candidate should not be left out when he is also promoted. So they said, they created a catch-up rule, so which was termed to be a catch-up rule. So a general category candidate will have a catch-up to a scheduled category candidate. It was the Virpal Singh Chauhan case in 1998, 1997. Then another amendment was brought in by the central government. It was amendment number 85. It was again to the 16(4)(a) subclause, which says now there will be promotion, there will be reservation not only in promotion, but there will be a consequential promotion or consequential seniority. Now this was more damaging. Now it stated that irrespective of somebody getting a promotion or getting accelerated promotion, we need to understand difference between an accelerated promotion and a consequential seniority. So accelerated promotion was provided by the government in 16(4)(a), but when the Supreme Court said, all right, accelerated promotion is fine, but this does not mean consequential seniority also. So they brought in another amendment, which was 85th amendment to that same section, and brought in the term consequential seniority. Now it was then the Supreme Court in 2005 in the M. Nagara judgment, which we are discussing today, brought in that yes, you can bring in whatever amendments you want to bring to the constitution because the parliament has power to do so. But you have to justify it on basis of 3 basic tenets, which is backwardness of SC/STs, you have to substantiate by justiciable data. 2, you have to say because of that backwardness, there is inadequacy in the representation in that post, in the government post. 3, you have to justify the effectiveness in the administration. Supreme Court wanted to say that just because for example, in a government hospital, you have seniority and the head of the department is from any reserved category and you look over the merit. You have to go through these tenets before you give reservation. So
sure.
it is on those criteria the reservation in promotion has to be applied to.
Taken, points taken. Now, Professor, as far as reservation is concerned, the grouse of the general category people or the general, everyone who falls under the general category is the fact that reservation is at multiple levels. So you have it at the entry level and then you have it further up the ladder as well. And that's where the problem lies, is what everyone's suggesting. So how do we deal with this issue really?
Well, I think if you understand the historical and sociological context of reservation, this should not be an issue at all. In the sense that reservation is not a poverty alleviation program. Reservation is not a favor to somebody. We realize that it's a democratic society. For historical reason, there are certain communities who would find it very hard to get into the system on their own. So you have also very strong institutionalized prejudice in the system, that even if they are competent Dalit candidates, it will be very difficult for them to get selected, because somehow there is, and we see it in the corporate sector where there is no reservation, it's very hard for Dalits to come into the corporate sector, at least at the higher level. At the lowest level, it's fine, because nobody else wants to do that job. So if you have discrimination in society, if you have prejudice in society, and if the society is still divided on caste lines, then you need to give some kind of quota to communities which experience that prejudice. And that was the kind of justification for reservations. When they enter the office, should they be treated equally? Yes, they should be treated equally. Does that mean that they have no access to senior position once you are employed? If the structure of prejudice prevails within the office, then obviously reservation should automatically apply to those categories. So now for this we need empirical data. Is there a prejudice in the office? We don't have very much empirical data, but whatever we have, if you look at the top positions in bureaucracy, very rarely scheduled caste candidates reach there, or scheduled tribe candidates reach there. They enter there, even if there is promotion, they somehow get higher salary, but positions of authority are not given to them, and very often it could perhaps happen to be because of prejudice, because of political reasons, because of community representations. So their position is in some sense larger level. Whatever data we have suggests that continues to be very weak.
Are you suggesting that efficiency has nothing to do with it, because the president of our country is a Dalit at the end of the day?
Well, that is symbolic and that is political. We all know that. If it was an elected president, things would have been very different. We have not had, I mean, we have very good political system, but when it comes to real positions of power, institutions of power, Dalit representation is still very little. And if you think that it is not required, then it is not required at the entry level either. If we understand, and if there is kind of evidence to say that Indian society no longer is divided on caste lines, there is no prejudice on caste lines, everyone gets equal opportunity, that is not the case. The way our education system is designed, the way our kind of neighborhoods are designed, they are designed in a manner that a certain set of people remain on the margins. And their marginalization is reproduced in everyday life. So I think that is the basic point. Once you have them in the office, then reservation becomes automatic. They should go up in their career. And there would be prejudice. If there is no prejudice in the office, obviously one can say, merit is a very dubious category.
Right.
I mean, merit is always subjective, always, what kind of efficiency the person has. So these are very dubious kind of things. Sociologically, one would not take them seriously.
So merit is subjective,
but yes,
is what you're suggesting.
Experience is required, efficiency is required, commitment is required. Otherwise, there are lots of other things that matter in the judgment, and that also needs to be decoded.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Let me go across to Mr. Chaturvedi now. Mr. Chaturvedi, caste-based reservation, of course, was supposed to be in place for a period of 10 years, but it has gone on and on and on, and it still exists even as we stand today. Why is that so?
Well, you see, the fact is that it was supposed to be for 10 years. But our society has not changed fast enough. The framers of our constitution had thought that our society would undergo a change and we would be able to remove all these prejudices which one of the panelists were talking about. But that hasn't happened. Because of that, from time to time, these reservations have continued at the level of entry in the services, and increasingly its impact is being felt that the level of representation in the services for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes has gone up substantially since then. But as far as the promotion is concerned, it is quite clear that it is much better that if many of the candidates are initially selected in their own merit and then promoted, rather than promoted as an affirmative action, because otherwise it is a question of what it will do to the organization. More than that, what will happen to the other provisions of the Constitution which the framers had thought. After all, the framers had very wisely put these provisions, but they had also put this provision of efficiency, and that they thought that is important. You see, the question is that the services are there to serve the people and not to create ABC, X, Y, Z, extra promotions or faster promotions. So we should see that if we should have a system which performs that function best.
Okay.
So if the courts have said that we should look at efficiency, I think this is a norm which we should not dilute. It is quite possible. In fact, I know in my own career that there have been many officers from the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe which have been outstanding, and they get a very fast promotion. So they would get such faster promotions, and many of them would gradually come up in their own right and would do very well. And that, I think, will really be strengthening the system rather than weakening the system. In case we have a system where this is done purely as an action because of reservations, I don't think we'll be strengthening our administrative structure.
Points taken. Let me take with the points that you're making to Ashok Kumar Bharti now. How long do we continue with reservation, and what happens to the creamy layer?
I'll come to that, but a small question. Mr. B.K. Chaturvedi, you were a cabinet secretary, isn't it?
I think that is established.
Because I would like to cite my argument.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Chaturvedi was the cabinet secretary and member of the planning commission, if I am right. And he must know very well that reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in employment was never for 10 years, which he is citing. So that is the one that I want to make it clear. That was reservation for the political parties in the parliament. That was not for the job. So this is the level of ignorance that exists in the bureaucracy. That is the one I wanted to make. And this is at the level of highest level of the bureaucracy in India.
You are absolutely wrong.
I'm sorry.
You are absolutely
Let him complete, and I'll come to you. You'll get a chance to respond to what Ashok Kumar Bharti is saying. Let him just make his point.
And the second is regarding the judgment of the judiciary. Let me tell that this question of reservation promotion went to the Allahabad High Court. And you have rightly mentioned, the advocate Sahab has rightly mentioned that 3 issues were raised. Now my question is the judiciary. Who is supposed to respond to those questions? Obviously the government of Uttar Pradesh and then government of the India in the Supreme Court. Even in case of Indira Sahni versus the State Union of India, I want to put a question whether the Dalits, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe were the party of that case. They were never heard. They were never made party, but the judgment was given without hearing them against them. So I guess the judiciary has a habit, without asking the victims to represent themselves, they are hanging them and deciding against their interests. Same thing has happened in the Prevention of Atrocity Act. Same thing happened in Indira Sahni versus Union of India. Same thing has happened in case of the reservation promotion. And when government is supposed to submit the file the data, and they are, instead of hanging the government for not following these court instructions, they are hanging the poor, helpless scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Is it the justice or is it the mockery of the justice?
Okay.
This is what happening in this country, and we can't tolerate it anymore.
You didn't answer my question. How long do we continue with reservation?
We want till there is a equality among all caste and class. We want this to remain, because reservation was never asked by the scheduled caste. It was thrust upon by Mr. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi on them when Mr. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi and his team signed an agreement with Baba Saheb Dr. Ambedkar in Pune Pact. It was not our demand.
Okay.
Our demand is, in this democracy, we should have right of representation at all levels.
Okay. You made your point. You made an accusation against Mr. Chaturvedi as well. Let him respond to that, and then I bring in the other panelists as well. Quick response from you, Mr. Chaturvedi.
Well, I'm afraid my colleague is absolutely wrong. There has been reservation in the services right since 1955, and it is because of that the recruitments have been taking place. And he says that as member of parliament, as cabinet secretary, one didn't know. I feel sad for him that he is making these remarks. I wish that our conversations are a little more polite and more to the point rather than attacking the panelists.
True.
There have been regular reservations right since the beginning, and as the other panelists pointed out, who is a legal mind, that ever since Indira Sahni's case, those issues rose. Subsequently, in the Nagaraj case, the issue rose, and then the courts pointed out. And the courts, to criticize the courts, to criticize all the institutions and to say that everyone is prejudiced, I'm afraid that's not my understanding of our country.
Okay, I quite second what Mr. Chaturvedi has said. The level of discourse here on the big picture Rajya Sabha television is very mellow. I apologize for the personal attack, but let's move on now. Piyush Singh, you wanted to say something first. Do add what you have to say to the debate. And also, do you believe that reservation has outlived its utility, and do we need to put an end to it?
So just to point out first that the topic is not about reservation, it is reservation and promotion.
Promotion, yes, indeed.
So I would just like to point out to the analogy. I would say I would like to substantiate my argument with the closest analogy. So reservation in the education system is under the Article 15 subclause 4, which says special provision. It does not mention the word reservation. So it says special provision for SC/ST candidates. 16(4), which is for the employment, it says reservation in the employment for SC/ST candidates. Now if you go back to 15(4), there is a reservation we are all aware about in the universities and educational institutions for SC/ST candidates. Now for 16(4) for the employment, we have brought in a 16(4)(a), which says promotion also, reservation and promotion also. I would say if promotion or reservation and promotion can be thought about or was the intent of the original constitutional framers, it can also be brought in 15(4) for the educational institutions, which is to say for even promotion from first year IIT batch for an SC/ST candidate, you can have the minimum criteria, minimum qualifying marks from 33 to 25. If you go by that analogy, but that is not there. It cannot be done. It is not possible because that is never the intent to have promotion of any student, whether a student or in any kind of classification, any kind of representation without merit. Now, when we say merit, there is a professor on the, I would say, panel who said that's a dubious term. It may be a dubious term, but we have to quantify merit. That is what the Supreme Court has said. So 15(4), if you cannot have promotions in educational institutions, which is not thought of, never had been in the constitution, in 16(4)(a), having reservation in promotion for SC/ST candidate was never thought of. Now to answer the question for how long it to be continued, there can be arguments and counter arguments to it. So my arguments for the reservation, I will keep it, I would say, reserved, because the issue is not about how long the reservation should continue. With respect to promotion, I would stick to what the Supreme Court stand was. It was a very, I would say, balanced judgment, balancing all amendments of the parliament, saying that all right, you have consequential seniority, please do it, but please take into all these factors into consideration before promoting any candidate or before bringing any legislation. I ask I would say, an alternative question. If Supreme Court has framed the guidelines, there's equal representation for the SC/ST community in the assembly, in the parliament. They can have their say over there. They can bring in the law for quantifiable data on SC/ST's backwardness, on the inadequate representation, and this can very easily be done rather than blaming the institution.
Sure. You know, Professor, as far as the status of promotions are concerned, where do they stand right now? And, you know, is the system suffering as a result of lack of promotions?
See, we need to decode what do we mean by promotion, right? Promotion is not simply that you join somewhere today and after 5 years you're due for promotion. I mean, if you are due for promotion and you fulfill all those qualifications, why should you not be promoted? Just because you are an SC, right? Or ST. So if you are due for promotion and everyone else is getting promoted, you will also get promoted. The point is, when it is not done, that it becomes an issue. Why is it not done? If you qualify to be promoted, everyone else has been promoted, you are also a bank officer, you should also be promoted. Why should? See, now, for example, in university system, we have 3 levels of cadre: assistant professor, associate professor, and professor. All these positions are advertised separately. There are professors' position. UGC gives universities separate set of professors' position. Why should there be no reservation in professors' position? If it is a job, it's like job of assistant professor. You have reservation in assistant professor. Tomorrow you will say you can only have reservation in the Safai Karamchari. No other job should have reservation, because after that they should qualify and then go up if one was to apply that law. So there are different kinds of jobs in our system. There are jobs at class 4 level, there are jobs at class 3 level, 2 level and 1 level. Within jobs also there are different cadre. right? Like I'm talking about the university system, and similarly it would be Rajya Sabha or any kind of bureaucracy. Internal promotion, if you are a cadre, then obviously if you deserve, and there would be evaluation system. Nobody is saying that there should be no evaluation system. If you have not been doing your job as an entry-level IAS officer, then obviously you would not be qualified to get reservation. But as individual, if you qualify, and then you are not allowed to be promoted just because of some reason which is not used for other candidates, then there is an issue.
Right.
And this is an empirical issue. I'm not saying that it exists, but if it exists, then it can be empirically documented. If there is a discrimination, if Dalit candidates feel discrimination, then there should be definitely some intervention, because this country wants to be representative country of different sections of population, and this deprivation has already been recognized by our constitution. If it is recognized, then it should also be applied.
Okay.
So the question of legality is a different aspect. Yes, one should debate that, but it is primarily a sociological question. It's primarily a representational question. If you have reservations, then why not have it at every level?
Okay.
If you have a different level of cadres, why should you not have different level of cadres within a cadre?
Point
so
taken.
I think this doesn't hold. If there is prejudice, if there is discrimination, then only we should have reservation. If there is none, then obviously there is no reservation. People get their promotion on their own, and there are systems in army also. For example, in armed forces, everyone doesn't get promoted.
Right.
There's only a small proportion of people who get promoted. Many of them have to stay at the lower level. Same happens with everyone.
Sorry to cut you short. Limited time on the program. I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to get quick closing comments from all my guests, starting with you, Mr. Chaturvedi. What's the way forward?
Well, the way forward is that the government would have to look forward and examine the interpretation of what the courts have said, and then move forward. But I will say that while it is essential that at the entry level we have reservations, at the promotional level we must go with caution and not do it as an affirmative action, but so that it doesn't really impair efficiency of the services, because that's what the services are there for.
Sure. Ashok, Kumar, Bharti, why reservation only in the public sector? Why not in the private sector as well?
We have always been making this point very clear that reservation is required at all industry, private, public or central or state government. That is the one that I wanted to make. And the second is the now 85% population of India is covered by the reservations. Only 15% are left. So if 85 peoples are covered by the reservation should be at least 85% as far as representation is concerned.
What are the factors that the Constitution bench is going to take into consideration when the bigger judgment itself is heard, Piyush?
I think definitely the two judgments they're talking about, one is V.S. Chennaiya judgment in 2004, and the second judgment is M. Nagaraj judgment in 2005. So the basic contention was that the Nagaraj judgment, which was a Constitution bench judgment again, 5-judge bench judgment again, did not rely upon the 2004 judgment, which was specifically on SC/ST Act. So they would want to compare both the judgments. But another very interesting thing in the M. Nagaraj judgment, which is being challenged right now, the second most senior most judge was K.G. Balakrishnan, who was the first Dalit Chief Justice of the country. He did not dissent from the judgment. The most important thing, he did not dissent. He agreed to the M. Nagaraja quantifying data and all those three conditions. He agreed to it.
Sure.
So that is one of the most important thing, and that should be taken into consideration.
All right. Professor, close the show for us with your concluding remark.
Yeah, I think caste continues to be very important, but we need to engage with it. Caste is not a matter of identity or right when we talk about reservations. It's an administrative policy. State should engage with it empirically. We need to have data, we need to have constant census, we need to talk about creamy layer, we need to talk about monopolies happening within caste. It's a very diverse question. I think at different levels we need to empirically engage with it. We need to collect data, we need to have studies of offices. Other countries where you have affirmative action, there's a regular surveys done of whether prejudice exists or not. Without data, we are all presenting our own prejudices, and then we kind of get into like, you versus me kind of thing. Once we have empirical data, then I think it's much easier to decide whether we want to have it there or not have it there. But the objective is very clear, it's laid out in the Constitution that we want a society which is equally representative of all sections of Indian society.
Okay, a scientific approach is what we need going forward, is what the panelist is suggesting. Remains to be seen, of course, what happens and what the future has in store for us. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.